and with my mother at the municipal airport in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And in about 1932, just a little bitty kid. And from there on, I guess I liked airplanes. But it was the Ford Tri-Motor back then.
Tell us about when you decided to join the military.
Because I didn't have any money to go to college,
Okay.
which was back in Pennsylvania in Man's Choice, where I lived in.
So what service did you join?
Army Air Force. We went to school, went to basic at Lackland Air Force Base. And after that, I was assigned to the 556th Weather Recon at something or other, California. And we were all gathering out there for our move to Japan.
What were you doing? What were you doing when you were stationed in Japan?
Well, first, when I went over there, our whole unit, the 56, we went to Yokota's where we were stationed at. And so we started training out of there. I was just a mechanic, so my CO, he said, "I like you," he said, "Chuck, so I'm going to give you our C-47 to work on." I said, "Whoopee." So me and this other guy, Lickladder, he just graduated from A&P school at Keesler Field. I worked on that 47 for, we were on there about a year or two. I flew with the aircraft, but I wasn't on flying status. But I flew and helped the new pilots get their time in. And as mostly all I done was raise and lower the landing gear, because we were making a lot of landings to get, because some of these pilots were just out of school, so that was pretty interesting, and so that went on for about not quite a year.
Were you still in Japan when the Air Corps, the
Yes.
Army Air Force changed their name?
Yes.
Tell us about how that went down.
Yeah, that was a surprise to everybody. It was about 54 or 5. And Colonel David, our CO, and we all met at the base theater, Japanese theater, and of course we were in Japan. We filled up the movie house because there was about 400 or 500 of us, ground crews and the gas drivers and all the mechanics and our weapon system.
You were saying that y'all had assembled in a theater or something?
Yeah, we were in Japan. We were all assigned. We were at Yokota Air Force Base at this time, and which is about 40 miles west of Tokyo. Incidentally, Tokyo was still showing the burned out city then at that time that I saw, which is terrible. Anyway, we all met at the theater, and he said, "Gentlemen, I got a surprise for you. You might like it and you might not like it." He says, "Tomorrow, right now you're wearing the brown suits of the Army for your military, being in the Air Force." He said, "Tomorrow, I want you all to gather out front and take off your brown suits, because I want you to file into our supply room where you're going to get the new blues." So there was about 400 of us out there, and I guess the Japanese thought we was crazy, but we were doing this for fun. It was a big thing, because we were making our own Air Force, United States Air Force at that time, and so what happened, just as a joke, well, a little funny. I got a picture of me standing with my brown suits on, but I had sewed on the Air Force corporal insignia on my sleeve, so to make it funny.
Cool. Well, was it shortly after that you started working crew on the B-29?
Yeah, well, we were still another almost a year, and we heard about the Korean War starting up, which was really going bad for us. We were, we were, our forces were at the last, almost bailing out at the bottom of Korea. They had taken the Russians were doing this too. They had almost occupied the whole peninsula of Korea. But it turned around that the Aussies, the Australians, had sent in their troops to help out, and they whipped the North Koreans back and Russians back to the right where they have the dividing point right now.
This is it. This is the B-29, the plane you've been waiting for. And it was worth waiting for. It's the biggest, fastest, mightiest heavy bomber in the world. It can travel farther and higher than anything else on wings. It has a pressurized cabin, permitting high-altitude flight without oxygen masks. It has 5 remotely controlled, electrically driven turrets, each carrying twin 50s, with a 20-millimeter cannon added to the turret in the tail.
When did you start flying missions in the B-29?
We were flying WB-29s, which were stripped down and all said, I get a picture of a stovepipe, which is on the mid-aircraft, and also the tail guns. Commanding officer said, well, we'll have to have the weapon system on the aircraft. And so, but the regular B-29s have a total weapon system where they have the CFG in the fuselage and 5 turrets, which are the arms. So our commanding officer says, had all of the meetings, says, I got some good news. They said, I've got orders to change MOSs to volunteers that want to fly tail gun on the B-29 while we fly over combat air territory. And so a bunch of us said, what does it pay? Oh, it pays a little bit more, $1 an hour or something like that. I said, well, that's good enough. That's better. That's better than nothing. That'll help my buy my Japanese beer, which is pretty good. All of our volunteers at that time said, okay, you got to change, but you got to learn how to use this turret because it's a different than you got a 43, which means you're aircraft mechanic, but this is 32, which is a different occupation altogether. So one of the guys there, staff sergeant, he came along with our move, but he was a weapon system. So he had us. So we got a turret we got a tail turret out of one of the B-29s and hooked it up so we could know how to operate it and also troubleshoot it if it had a problem.
The tail turret is checked by the tail gunner. But again, the pilot is responsible. If the guns fail, he gets the blame. So he watches the tail gunner as the Shatterall feed mechanism is inspected. The tail turret is more restricted in movement, but it has a 20-millimeter cannon in addition to the twin 50s the others carry.
Our mission was not to find hurricanes. Of course, we're in Yokota, and Yokota is too far north on the continent to have any hurricanes or tornadoes, whatever. So then we started flying. Me and I think 7 other guys, we changed our MOSs so we got to fly. When we got 15 missions in, we got a 5-day leave. So we had orders to go some of the best hotels in Kyoto. It was top grade. So that's where we went to spend our 5 days leave. And we went by train.
So you said the actual missions you flew into and over North Korea are top secret. You can't tell us. So even if we tickled your feet, you wouldn't tell us.
We would. I'll tell you the track we had, which is every day. This flight had to go every day, rain, sleet, snow, whatever it is. Of course, then the bomb group moved in to run their bomb runs on North Korea. So we had to move to Misawa, which is in northern part of Japan. And that place up there is colder than blazes, even in the summertime. And it snows early. We took off from either Misawa or Yokota, and we kind of flew a southern west direction over the Japan Sea. And once we got down below on the other side of Korea, we made a U-turn and go north. And we flew at about 1,500 feet all the way up the Yellow Sea, which was about 400 miles. And we got that to that part of North Korea, and we would head west, and we would fly over eastern Russia. We would spend about 4, 5, 6 hours flying back and forth, collecting, I don't know what, but you'll see our smokestack, which they were collecting any nuclear testing that Russia was doing back then. They were just experimenting. So coming back, well, then we made an easterly quick turn, and we flew over North Korea. We were in combat area. The B-29's weapon system was much too slow for the MiGs, and our system was slow. So it was after the MiG shot down about 6 or 8 airplanes. We started flying at night, but you can't see anything at night with a bomb anything. The only thing we were blowing up rice paddies, and that's about it. We done the whole bore. And when we made our loop around South Korea, then we loaded up. Then that's when you went to the rear turret, and I would shoot the guns for a while, test to make sure everything's okay. And sometimes for the fun of it, we used to use a trailing antenna for communications. But at that time, there was no navigation facilities anywhere in that part of the country,
All right.
except some of the old radio stations, which were not reliable. So I would shoot off the weight off just for practice.
Did you ever shoot down any aircraft?
I shot at a couple of them. One time there was an airplane way in the distance. I couldn't hardly see it. And so I give it about 2 or 3 bursts, but I didn't see any smoke, so I guess I missed it.
Gun camera footage of fighters shot down is terrifyingly real. A camera is activated by the firing mechanism. It is seen here, mounted between the twin machine guns of the aft lower turret.
One time I volunteered to fly CFC, which is the master gunner on the aircraft, and that's the turret top. We flew a day mission, and that was terrible because those MiGs were playing heck with us. But I did get to shoot a couple of them with it, but I know I missed them because my bullets never even hit them or touch them.
Mm-hmm.
That big alley we used to call where the Sabres used to meet up with the MiGs. They could fly out for combat, go up the MiG alley, which was middle part of the Korea. When the Sabres met up with the MiGs could only stay in that area for 30 minutes. If they stayed any longer, they'd run out of fuel, so they'd be gone. That's where their airfield was, so they had to be careful about their operation, their fuel they'd run out. And some of them had crashed because they were in a fight with them. They find themselves as probably making a dive on it, and the engine had quit. so they either crashed, landed in the sea, which was only about 50 miles to the east.
Eventually, you ended up coming back to the States, Randolph Air Force Base. Is that
Yes.
what you were saying earlier?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about what were you doing at Randolph?
Randolph is where the bomb squadron was training their air crews at. When they brought me back, they sent me to Randolph, and at that, when I was at Randolph, I was the gunnery instructor on our ship, because each crew had to fly the B-29 before they went to Japan, but right away the war quit.
Well, tell us about one or some project that you worked on when you were at Bell Helicopter in Texas. The Huey Cobra, you worked on several projects with that?
The
Infrared?
the Cobra was being developed as a fighting machine for Vietnam, and so me and this engineer I worked for, Hugh Upton, he said, Sergeant Chuck, he said, we got to do some investigation. The Army wants to know a little bit about this head tracker thing. Can we get the type of electronics for a gunner to sit in the Cobra, and he can move the weapon system around by using his head, moving around. So I said, okay, we'll test that out. So I don't know, I flew Cobra four times, I don't know. So we wrote a report on it and said, yeah, we were happy with the way that would work. So we had worked out some of the computations for moving the turret, what speed to move it with, and its elevation, which would follow the head motion without the delay. Hugh Upton told me, he said, Chuck, I got an idea. We were to do something about being able to see this night vision, or at nighttime, through some glasses. So I had a buddy down someplace in the part of Bell Helicopter, and I got with him, and we whipped up, and you can see that with the eyeglasses. And I said, well, my rep up and says, well, how are you going to tell where you're going to see this? I said, well, I guess we'll have to have some kind of a display or something to look at. And he says, okay. He said, I know a guy in Dallas that's good at making optics. I said, okay. So I went over to see him, and so we whipped up those glasses, and also those miniature tubes. So these glasses, as you can see there, we mounted the TV tube on there, and the optics was such control that the display was put on front of the glass inside, so you could see outside plus the display at the same time. And so we went as far as making, this is all true now, anyway. It sounds like bull, but I'm amazed what anyway, I'm amazed. Anyway, so you up there says, he said, he came down one day in my little cubby hole and said, I got something here you might be interested in. It's called fiber optics. I said, what the hell is fiber optics? He said, well, I can take this, and he showed me he had one that had the fibers were laid in a certain, by a machine, I think, I'm not sure, but if you held it down this end and looked through, you could see the carpet right here. It was a fiber optics, which now the fiber they use are, you can't even measure them. They're thin. Anyway, so he said, well, Chuck, what you got in mind? I said, well, I thought if I can get to 47, and I said, I can run some tests. So I built this box. I've done some tests on that, and that kind of worked out. The Army was kind of happy, like, 'cause they gave Bill some money to do some more.
Well, you had a pretty long career at Bell Helicopter, but then after that, you kind of I guess you technically retired from Bell Helicopter, found your way up to Huntsville, Alabama, and then ultimately ended up working for NASA with a contractor on
Yes.
the SRB, the Space Shuttle boosters.
The basic story is I worked on the table drawing. I was in drawing too, so when I didn't have nothing else to do, I'd go up and help them draw out some blueprints for on the 212. I got the job of making an instrument fit in the panel, and so I worked on that. But that was a good experience. I learned a lot of the basic drawing tools and how not to make mistakes, because what's those other guys say, check valves. The check guys, they come up and say, Chuck, you mean this is not right. I says, okay, what's right? So we corrected it. So anyway, and all this time though, I kept doing these things, and then my boss, Mr. Murphy, came and says, Chuck, why are you doing all this? I said, well, I like it. He says, why don't you go to college, go to University of Texas. So I said, okay, I'll try it. So anyway, it's here I'm sitting with a bunch of other guys in this big auditorium, and this guy down there is talking about, and he's scribbling stuff on the board with his chalk. And I said, and I thought to myself, what the hell am I doing here? I said, I can get this job done quicker than he's even thinking about it. So I had 14 years with Bill. I knew this guy that was a contractor, and he said, Chuck, he said, if you want to run out to there, Alabama, Huntsville, he said, maybe we can find something to do. I said, okay. So this company, the guy says, he said, you put in your resume that you were an A&P mechanic. And I said, yeah. He said, I can get you something going with NASA. So we met this gentleman who ran USBI. The mother company was Sikorsky. Sikorsky was part of this bigger company, OT. So he interviewed me, and he said, yeah. He said, but what we're working on is the contract with NASA to to work with them on the shuttle.
LPS is go.
Houston flight.
Houston flight is go.
SRO. SRO is go. You have arranged clear to launch. And CDR. CDR is go.
USBI did get the contract to work with NASA. Most of it was going to Florida to recovery missions on the solid rocket boosters, and that was the main purpose. And also, they put me in charge of the batteries, battery systems. So when new batteries came in, we used every mission we used 2 batteries, and they were thrown away after the mission was taken down. That was about 10 or 12 years I worked with NASA on that deal. There's 2 ships, one ship for towing back each SRB.
Crew members keep careful track of the countdown. They watch the space shuttle being launched and track its graceful west to east arc. Approximately 2 minutes into the flight, the boosters shut down, their fuel expended, and the rockets separate from the external tank and free fall. The frustum separates from the booster, activating main chute deployment, then descends into the sea under a separate drogue parachute. The main parachutes open to slow the booster's descent to approximately 60 miles per hour before they fall into the sea. Once the boosters splash down, the 2 ships spring into action. The next few minutes are critical as they race at top speed toward the floating boosters. The ships close in on the casings, parachutes, and frustum. The crews are ready, and with the boosters safely floating in their vertical positions, the retrieval ships deploy divers in small boats. The frustum is lifted from the sea and secured to the deck. With frustum and parachutes recovered, attention turns to the booster casings. The crew pushes overboard the DOP, which is an acronym meaning Diver Operated Plug. The divers working at the 100-foot level guided the DOP toward the booster nozzle, using the tether line from the inflated salvage bag that they had previously inserted into the nozzle. But this plug has locking arms and an expandable rubber tube which completely closes off the booster nozzle and prevents further filling with salt water. An air line running back to the vessel is attached to a compressor pumping high-pressure air. As the air displaces water in the booster casing, it rises up out of the sea until it topples into the semi-log mode for towing. A tow line is attached and secured and lengthened. The ships begin the voyage back to port. The entire recovery procedure is usually accomplished in 5 hours from splashdown to towing.
Here I am, have all that, I have that aircraft education. So I went out one day to the airport in Hartselle. The FAA tester was out there, and he says, why don't you get your license checked? I says, okay. So I've got all the books, passed the test, and got my license.
But after you left USBI, you were working for another company that was overhauling Black Hawks. Now, you don't have to go a lot of detail because it's hard for you to remember that. That's about the time you broke your hip.
This was, yeah, I know what you're talking, yeah. This company had the contract with the Army to modify,
Black Hawk.
well, we had Black Hawks there from the contract. We, the crews, and I was in charge of a crew that would make changes on the mod upgrades as they bring the aircraft in.
Right.
They had crews come in and strip the helicopter down to the airframe, and we would go through the parts of inspection to see if these items could be used again or had to be thrown away.
Right.
And
Yeah, this is one we alluded to earlier about the youngsters that you were working around that were doing that were always giving you a hard time about how old you were.
yeah,
That's when we decided to make you that T-shirt that
yes.
showed you as being one of the Wright brothers.
Yeah, it was pretty windy that day.
There's Grandpa. There's Dad right there.
Yeah, that was a fun day. That was
Oh, that actual day? You weren't there. We just made that up.
the Wright brothers got their aircraft flying for 16 minutes.